things off for our final session.
Liz, sorry, just one wee moment. Sorry.
Sorry. You're going to give me the nod when I'm to speak, yeah.
Cool. Yep.
Okay, I think that's us just about ready for our final session of the Edinburgh Business Festival. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. As you're all been enjoying the last day or two, our theme has been business with purpose, and it's the genesis really of the Business Festival was last year when we thought we were getting into the final furlong of the pandemic. We thought it would be great to energize and inspire people as we started recovery. Little did we know we'd still be wearing our masks nearly, a year and a half later. But whilst inspiration and recovery were the focus of last year, I think taking the temperature of businesses as we move more sure-footedly into recovery, we see both our businesses and workforce rethinking how they want to proceed in the future. And it's not just about bouncing back to where we were before, but it's about bouncing forward to the kind of lives we want to live and the purpose this brings. And increasingly, sustainability, fair work, business with purpose are now mainstream conversations being had by business. It's not something that's done off the side of the desk anymore, but these values are absolutely core to business models, strategies, and business plans. And the Chamber believes there's only one direction of travel, so we all need to embrace this and get on the bus. And so someone who's been more enlightened than most of us for a lot longer is our final speaker of the festival, David Duke Mbe, founder and CEO of Street Soccer Scotland and Street Soccer London. The final session is going to take place as sort of in conversation with David. And we are very lucky to have, I'm going to just check I get the name, Sabina Caddick Mackenzie, who's senior partner at Charlotte Street Partners. And she's going to be in conversation with David and hosting some questions afterwards. So if you do want to ask some questions, please pop them in the Q&A box. The good thing about this means that I can listen intently and I don't have to do anything. So I'm just going to give a brief introduction and then I'm going to hand over to Sabina. And I look forward to the session. So I'm going to introduce Sabina first. Sabina is senior partner at the strategic communications agency, Charlotte Street Partners. She joined Charlotte Street Partners in 2017 after an 8-year stint with housing and homelessness charity Shelter. A journalist by profession, Sabina now advises on a wide range of public, private and third sector clients on issues including corporate communications, public affairs, media and crisis communications. Sabina is on the board of trustees of Street Soccer Scotland, as well as Fresh Start, a charity that helps people with experience of homelessness in Edinburgh resettle into permanent accommodation. She also provides pro bono strategic communication counsel to children and young people's charities, including UNICEF UK, the Children's Parliament, and the Scottish Youth Parliament. Sabina was born and raised in Bosnia, fleeing the country during the height of the conflict in the Balkans. She has lived experience of being a refugee and of homelessness. And she's put her language skills to good use by translating children's books, most notably a book for children who have experienced war and trauma. I think something very close to our hearts at the moment. And so I'm delighted and honoured that we have David Duke joining us this afternoon. David is recognised as a leader on harnessing the power of sport to create impactful, tangible social change and inclusion for people and communities across the UK and beyond. He's a well-known face and voice in this sector, and he has grown to be widely admired for his humility, strategic problem solving, social entrepreneurship, and inspirational personality. As founder and CEO of Street Soccer Scotland and Street Soccer London, non-profit social enterprises that use football to create positive change in lives of socially disadvantaged adults and young people, David has most recently set up Change Centre Scotland, a sport and educational centre with a vision of tackling isolation, homelessness, supporting mental health and well-being by creating on-site personal development and self-management support. He's a regular contributor to international forums and global events such as TEDx, Beyond Sport, Global Summit, COP26 and Social Enterprise World Forum. David was Sunday Times Changemaker of the Year and CNN Hero in 2016. He has been recognised by Glasgow Caledonian University and Edinburgh's Queen Margaret University, both awarding him honorary doctorates for his considerable societal contribution. And just to add to his achievement, he was awarded an MBA in the 2018 New Year's Honours List. We are absolutely honoured to have him with us today. I'm going to now hand over to Sabina and I can settle back to enjoy the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Wow, what an introduction to the man himself.
I'm surprised no one signed off already.
The numbers are ticking down as we speak. That was really quite the introduction, and I think just says quite a lot about what you've managed to achieve over the years. We've known each other, David, for a very long time now. As Liz mentioned, I'm on your board and we work closely together on ending homelessness in Scotland. One of the things that struck me just as we were preparing for this is how often you and I come back to chatting about purpose, whether we're having just a friendly blether or whether we're talking about work things. It's always with you comes down to purpose. And street soccer is, what, 13 years old now, I think. And since day one, you've always clung on to that idea of creating not only purpose, but hope and relationships for the people that street soccer supports and that you play football with, because that's what it comes down to. You and I, from that introduction, I think people have an idea of the adversity perhaps that we faced in our lives. So I think we perhaps have a greater perspective than some about what it means to have purpose and to come back to that in your day-to-day life. So I guess my first question, looking back at all of that, is to say, what does it mean to you to have true purpose? And how do you think that your approach to leading a purpose-led organization has changed over the last 13 years, or indeed has it?
Well, I think, from an individual perspective, I think purpose is so important, in terms of, and you can find purpose in many ways. My purpose, I don't have any kids, so and normally like if you've got kids and that, your purpose is to make sure your kids have a better life and they're safe and all that, or it's to have a really strong, family foundation and stuff like that. But for me, my purpose is, street soccer. It's been a big part of my life since 2009. The work we do on a daily basis was similar to the support that I received, going through homelessness and stuff like that. I was given a chance, I was given an opportunity to play football. I was able to access role models and support when I needed it, and was mentored along the way. And I think, the purpose of street soccer is to kind of do just that. As you say, it's about providing, making sure that everyone's part of something. I think, when we first started, it kind of stemmed from kind of homelessness, my experience of homelessness and so on. But, as you go, you realise that, it's just really important that people have something to wake up for and something to be part of and something to look forward to, and also to kind of access the support they need it when they need it, and sometimes, depending on what kind of support you need, that often it's quite far away or quite hard to navigate the right support, so actually coming into a project like street soccer allows that support to come closer to the individual. And in terms of our purpose, from day one, it's like, obviously we've grown over the years, over the last 13 years, but from day one, when I first started street soccer, when I had, my bag of balls over my shoulder and my posters in one hand, my purpose was to try and reach somebody who was in the position I was. I was, isolated in a hostel. I was getting involved in things that weren't good for me, but they allowed me to pass the time because I was in crisis. I was, had no hope, had nothing to look forward to. And so every day, when I remember just kind of going around all the hostels and day centres and that, every day it was always about getting somebody involved, reaching out to somebody who could benefit, just having, somewhere to be and somewhere to go. That was my purpose. And I think when I speak to some of the frontline team, in street soccer, the coaches, the coordinators, I try not to kind of go, here's our strategy, this is what, for me it should, and it's the same today, it's like every time we get somebody involved, that's another person who could potentially change their life, or, who potentially has an opportunity to get support, or to grow, or, even like yesterday, I'm in London just now with street soccer here, and I was chatting to Mark, one of our volunteers, who's kind of came through the programme, and he was doing a kind of interview and talking about where he was at, and when he was asked about what did it feel like, because he was homeless in London, on the streets, and he said it was cold and it was alone. It was lonely, and what he said about coming to the street soccer for the first time, he felt warm and he felt welcome, and that's a real comparison. So like for our team and our staff, and it's always about saying, right, how can we get someone else involved? How can we reach out and bring someone into the kind of street soccer family as such? And
that's such basic human needs. So the purpose for that, for helping that individual, it's not about ending homelessness for them or, giving them a roof, the next day and supporting them to sustain an accommodation. It's about, a full belly and, warm toes, and making sure that they feel valued as an individual. So you take a very human approach, I think, to the work that you do, and everything comes back to people. Yeah,
and I think, I've been around kind of homelessness, and obviously Scotland, some great charities in Scotland doing their bit to kind of towards ending homelessness. But for me, whether it be kind of employability, homelessness, I think the key thing is that the basic stuff's there, that access to support. And I think, having a house is one thing, but you also need that community and having people around you and having purpose, and most people find purpose through, employment and having a job. Probably 80% of our network is either former or current work colleagues, but until you get someone in a safe place, a confident place, because even just stepping onto the pitch for the first time can be really a big thing for someone who's struggling with their own mental health. And I think the pandemic's kind of taught us all that. Normally, only very few can sympathise with someone who's kind of been homeless and all that because they've never been there. But when it comes to mental health and being isolated, if you look at the pandemic, it cut us all off from each other. It made many of us financially insecure. Suddenly, none of us were in control of anything. But actually, that's normal life for some people, and certainly for some of the people that we serve and support. And I think, just having those basic things in place, if people are confident and they're happy and they're, they've got that structure around them, then the next step is maybe getting a job or sustaining housing and stuff like that. Because I remember when I first got my house after 3 years of homelessness, I was volunteering and coaching at a kids' football team. That got me out the house and that got me a network, the other coaches, the parents and stuff like that. See, if I was just left to my own devices, I'd have struggled. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean?
At what point did you recognise that need for purpose? So when did it click for you that you needed something to get out of bed for, and that was something that you were going to commit to doing for, 13 years later?
It was just waking up in the morning and having a goal. It's waking up in the morning without a goal it's a dark place, and so you end up floating and existing. Whereas actually waking up with a goal, even back then, when it came to going to represent Scotland at the Homeless World Cup at the time, I was homeless and all that. My goal was to be as healthy as I could physically so that I could perform on the pitch. And my goal was to improve on the pitch, and but by doing those things, it started to improve my kind of how I seen myself in terms of self-worth and stuff like that. I'd no self-worth, but suddenly I felt like I was something, particularly when I was doing the coaching. You had these kids kind of looking up to you and all that. And I think self-worth is so important for people to have, because if you've not got self-worth, then that can lead to, almost a form of self-harm. You don't appreciate yourself, and I think it's really important that, we offer and show people's true worth, and I think, there's a lot needing done to kind of solve some of societal's issues and stuff like that, but we can just start with making sure that everybody feels part of something and everyone's included as opposed to excluded.
So from a business point of view, what would your advice be? That's, great insight into giving people self-worth and motivating them and making sure that they feel like they have control of whether it's a job or their life or their own situation. What advice would you give to business people and business leaders of how to use purpose to motivate their own workforce or their own teams?
Well, I think purpose can be seen in different lights. For us, purpose is about, doing the right things and trying to support society and support the people within the communities, and I think one of the big pieces of work that we did was look at our values in terms of, because as you grow as an organisation, it's so much easier when it's just you, because you only need to worry about yourself. But then once you start to kind of expand,
you've got typical founder syndrome, which I have found, which is that you control everything and you want to do things yourself. You're getting better.
Thanks. But no, it's not. But it's not even so much that. It's as you grow, you need to understand. You're faced with tough decisions, And I remember a few over the years where, because you always want to do the right thing, but sometimes you just need to say, right, when you're making decisions, look at your values. Our first values, player first. So even I remember it was to do with funding. We got some funding once, and it just never really fitted us as an organisation. So I was left with a decision to keep the money or to kind of pass it back, because it was kind of changing who we were. And there's a number of times, you need to kind of say, right, what's best for everybody? What's best for the players, And I think having strong values helps you kind of, determine your purpose and keeps you kind of focused. And I think the value of kind of purpose-driven business now is we know that, new talent coming into the sector want to work for organisations who are socially minded or who make a difference in their communities. So from your kind of biggest corporations such as like Nike, for example, Nike spent the last 3 years redefining their own purpose, and that's ran right through the organisation. But at every level, businesses need to say, right, here's who we are, and here's how we make the world a better place. And you can still make profit and everything else. It can still be a business, but I think whether it be around net zero issues and stuff like that, or looking at how your business impacts the local community, I think it's important that people do the best they can to make society better. And I think that's what people want to see now, and not just suppliers as well. Some of your big suppliers will be looking at, say, right, okay, so let's see how you impact the planet or the people, and I think it's really important to kind of keep that in mind. And I think sometimes it's it's good to do things for the greater good as well. It's not just about making money. It's about how can we make things better for everybody, because actually a fairer society is good for everyone. It's good for business.
Yeah, and I think that in and of itself brings your own people and teams on board if they have a common purpose to drive them in a personal and professional capacity, doing greater good in their community or even within their workplace, with their own communities, or with their own teams, makes such a difference. Yeah. Street soccer you've grown steadily over the years. I was going to say at pace, but you haven't actually. You've done it in a really organic way. There have been points where you've said to me, we're not going to do that because that would, I think, put a strain on the teams that we have, and that would stretch us too much and take us away from our core service and purpose for the players that we do have. How have you taken your people, your coaches, staff, the players as well, as they have increased in number? How do you ensure that everyone is on the same page when it comes to the direction of the organization and coming into work or onto the pitch every day, and making sure that everyone's driven by the same purpose?
Yeah, and again, I suppose it's down to communications and your values as well. When we kind of did a revisit on our values about, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago now, and that was like players involved. It was, you know, frontline staff, board members, like everyone was kind of part of that kind of conversation, which led to these 6 things, you know. And I think as you grow, I mean, we've grown, as you say, organically, but there's been wee kind of times when we've kind of, obviously with the change centre recently, and I think that the secret to that is just finding the right people, you know, and making sure. I mean, I'm notoriously bad at looking at CVs, but I like to meet people just to suss them out, and, you know, and I always try and find the right, you know, culture. I think culture is really important, and you know that yourself in terms of the board and all that. I always think it's important to find the right culture within the organisation, and also try and look for diversity as well. You know, and we could be better. Our own board could be better and more diverse. And, you know, I'll be the first to admit that, and we'll try and do better. But as a team, you know, it's, you know, we've got a lot of lived experience in our team, you know, in terms of 60% of the team is former street soccer players and so on. But I think, you know, just finding the right people who buy into that vision, you know, and buy into that values, and they kind of help us grow.
Great. And I suppose just thinking of the audience that we have here with us today, if a business leader or even a one-man band was thinking to themselves, you know, how do I actually start this process of deciding what my purpose is going to be and sticking to it, what would you say to them at this stage? How, for you were obviously on your own when you started, you know, being purpose driven, and you've applied that to street soccer and its growth. But say someone has a few employees, what sort of process would you encourage them to go through in order to make sure that they landed on the right thing, if there is such a thing?
It's hard to, I mean, I think the key thing is being passionate about what you're doing. You know, it's like most people I've met who's been kind of set up businesses, entrepreneurs and stuff, have been, most of them kind of passionate about the particular thing, whether it's vegan food or, you know, go back to Nike, you know, the guy was a passionate athlete and wanted to make good running shoes. You know, Phil Knight wanted to create the best running shoes, and that was his passion, and his purpose was to make the best, you know. And I think just to kind of have that, you know, real drive and determination and passion about what you do, because if you don't like it, yeah, it might make you money, but you're going to be sick of it, and you're going to want to do other things, and it's hard to excel in things that you don't really like. You know, our purpose was clear. It was just to try and help people, you know, and that will never change. But my advice is just to kind of, you know, do what you love, you know, so it doesn't feel like a job. So, I mean, it's tiring. You know, I'm shattered and I've been running about daft all week, but there's a greater goal. You know, it's like there's a reason why you're doing it, because you're trying to help more people. You know, and from a business perspective, whatever that business is, you know, you're trying to get yourself to the next level. You know, it's creating those goals and how you get there. So, and if you can bring that kind of purpose behind it as well in terms of making a difference, then all the better.
We will jump onto the Q&A shortly, but just one final question. My favorite thing to hear from you whenever we chat is to get some of the stories off the pitch. You know, what has been happening, you know, who's done what, you know, what have the players accomplished? And speaking specifically about purpose, Are there any stories that you can tell us about where it's really positively impacted someone, even if it's a minor thing, that the difference basically street soccer has made to the lives of people here?
I mean, where do you start? Because when you're around it all the time, you see it a lot. Do you know what I mean? But I think what's kind of, sometimes you get a reminder all the time, you know. And I think I spoke about Mark, who I was with yesterday in London, and Frankie, you know. So Mark and Frankie are new kind of volunteers who are kind of moving into the sessional staff. They played for the England Homeless World Cup team in the Home Nations last year. Two very different stories, you know. Frankie is a refugee from Sudan, you know, escaped the war, kind of travelled through various refugee camps, and, you know, got a lifeboat across the channel, you know, and arrived in London, you know. And he was speaking to him yesterday, and, you know, he's saying that when he first arrived in London, he knew that if he could find football, he would be okay, because football was his passion. It's what he loved. You know, he's got called Frankie because he's a big Chelsea, Frank Lampard fan, and used to wear his top, and he used to walk 10 miles just to watch the Chelsea games in a local cafe in Sudan. He said, you know, football, he would be okay if he found football. And he said that, you know, although my family's back in Sudan, my other family's here in London. And by that he meant the team in London and his fellow players and stuff like that. And what an amazing guy. And I think we'll always kind of, so that's the kind of thing that always kind of, just that kind of courage and that resilience, and just a reminder of how important football is and sport in general. But also I think recently as well, you know, spending a lot of time in around our women's programme and stuff like that, particularly in Dundee, and you can never underestimate kind of what a role model does. I had a role model, and then I suppose when I started street soccer, I was a kind of role model to the players who were coming, because I was the coach. I was their first point of contact, and those first points of contact within street soccer are so important, because players need to see themselves in the coach and the coordinator, you know. And one of our players in Dundee, she was, you know, kind of just out of prison. She'd done one of her prison programs, and she met Sarah, one of her coaches, and, you know, she realised that Sarah had lived experience of what we were doing, or, you know, what she'd been through. Sarah kind of had a shared experience, and she thought to herself, well, you know, if she can do it, I can do it. Mm-hmm. So when she came out, you know, the first place she contacted was Sarah, and got involved in the programme there, and just seeing her last week, just loving life and being involved. And, you know, one of the other girls says that, you know, she used to wake up in the morning and not want to get out of bed, and now she jumps out of bed and runs down to the Street 45 session just to kind of be with the girls and have a cup of tea and again, just be part of something, you know. So things like that are just, it's why we do what we do. But listen, there's loads of great work happening in Scotland, you know, and anything that we do is a result of having strong partnerships. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it be some of the rehabilitation centres, other homeless charities, you know, everyone's trying to do their bit, you know, but the key thing is try to do it together, you know. And because we've only got this amount of resource, and the next charity's got that resource, and actually if we share those resources and create a menu of kind of opportunity and support for the individuals that we serve, then that's how we kind of create the change. You know, we need to do away with this kind of being protective of your own organisation. It's not about the organisation, it's about the cause. Mm-hmm. You know, and it's
a main message, isn't it? One team, not just on the pitch.
Yeah, it's a team of the country. Yeah, I mean, and that's the key things. Sometimes you can get wrapped up trying to protect your own stuff, but actually, it's not about us. Mm-hmm. You know, it's about everybody, and it's about making sure that we leave our organisations at the back and just focus on, right, how can we make it better for people? And that's when the power of partnership takes place, and aligning yourself with similar minded. We talk about purpose, it's about finding the right partners as well who share purpose, because there's no point working with an organisation that, you know, we avoid DWP because personally I don't, you know, there's a lot of stuff that they do I don't think's right, you know. So it's about finding those partnerships which are important, and not saying that the stuff that DWU do, I'm sure works okay, but for us, we need to find the right partnerships. But it's about the person. It's not about numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Numbers are nothing. It's about people, you know, and we need to take that kind of person-led, you know, it's always about a person. It's always about a name, and that's how we address stuff, you know. But we need to do in partnerships and finding the right partners.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I think we've always said is that we're all made of the same stuff. It's just some of us have had better luck than others to be where we are today. We're going to move on to the Q&A just now, if that's all right. There's a great question actually, which links to what we've just been speaking about, which is how can we as individuals and businesses help people who may be facing difficulty or are hard to reach?
Yeah. I mean, again, just work in partnership with a local organisation. I was having this conversation this morning actually in a meeting, and you know, there's a company that work with quite a lot of brands and stuff like that. And what I was saying is, you know, I've never met someone who doesn't want to make a difference. Mm-hmm. You know, regardless of how successful they are or whatever line of work they do, you know, everyone wants to make a difference in some way. But I suppose it's about how you enable it. You know, and for the third sector, the charity sectors, how do we become enablers for, you know, the public sector to kind of chip in and make a difference? So how would you get involved? I would just kind of, you know, look at your team, have a discussion with your team, say what are we passionate about? I'm sick of seeing people homeless in Edinburgh. Right, okay, let's look at a homeless charity. Or, you know, mental health is something that affects us all. How can we do, especially young mental health? You know, mental health was mentioned in the UNICEF Global State of the Nation report for the first time as a risk to children. You know, so what charities out there can we support? And it doesn't always have to be financial. You know, it can be, you know, volunteering or, you know, doing the kilt walk for them. You know, kilt walk's an easy way to generate good income, you know, for charities. And if anyone wants to sign up for us, speak to Sabina, get on. But no, just kind of contact the local charity and go and see them in action as well. Bring your team down. But I think first of all, you want to start with your team. Say what's important to us, and then there's, you know, 1,000,001 charities who would love to get support. You know, it's a hard time for charities just now. You know, and the need.
I can say as a member of your board, obviously, and Fresh Start, that's one of the best ways that professionals can contribute their time and their skills to organisations. Joining a board, I think, can make a real difference. Organisations like Street Soccer and other charities as well.
Yeah.
We've got, someone has asked if there is anyone in particular that you've worked with or helped that stands out or has really inspired you.
Yeah, loads. Obviously I mentioned Sarah, our women's coach. You know, I wouldn't like to kind of single one. I mean, I think I'm very lucky to be friends with a lot of players who's come through the programme, you know, even in the early days of street soccer, you know, just seeing people in their day-to-day jobs and kind of living the life, you know. I think it'd be hard to pick one, you know, but I just think everyone who steps on that pitch, regardless of how far they go or whatever they do, you know, it takes a big thing because, you know, we've been through a pandemic, so some of these have probably experienced a bit of social isolation, social anxiety because of the isolation, and even I felt it a wee bit, trying to get back into normal ways of living, you know, it's tough. So you imagine you've been, you know, cut off from society or, you know, out of work for 5 years and stuff like that, and your confidence is at an all-time low. And so just actually getting involved, they're all amazing.
Great. And one more question before we hand back, and I think I sort of, because I know you so well and I know your story, but someone has asked if you're able to share more of your personal story and background, how you became homeless and how you actually overcame that, because you said it was services like Street Soccer Scotland that supported you, and it was football that you'd found, and that you were able to move on from that.
Yeah.
If you're just able to share a few details about what happened.
Yeah, so just kind of how I ended up homeless and how I got out. So grew up in Govan. I had a kind of chaotic home life. My father was an alcoholic. My mum left home when I was about 13. Obviously, she had to kind of look after herself as well. It was very challenging living in that environment. My dad had this illness which caused pain for other people, sadly. So I kind of stayed with my dad, and then he passed away, which led to me becoming homeless for kind of 3 years. And you can imagine what that's like in terms of the insecurity and the pain and the darkness and the trauma that brings. But again, football was something that I'd played since I was a kid. It was always my escapism. And I came across a poster advertising trials. The big issue were running a kind of football tournament to go and play for Scotland at the Homeless World Cup, and that was in 18 years ago. And it's quite weird now because some of the players weren't born when I played.
Oh God!
Which is sad in one respect as well, that it's still happening and things haven't changed. But the football, for me, it was just having purpose, having that somewhere to go Tuesday, Thursday, and then coming back for the World Cup, started volunteering. So that kept my structure. That kept giving. The football stopped. That was the past now. But I needed to keep that kind of structure and have somewhere to go and somewhere to be. Went back to college. I left school 13 as well, and went to college. Studied as a kind of community worker. And I was working in kind of with homelessness charities and doing football coaching at night, and that was the journey into street soccer. And I must say, street soccer's never been about me, or what we've done's never been about me. It's been about the people I've met. And I think I'm a different person today than I was when I started because I've learned so much from people who've offered their support to myself and the people at street soccer. So street soccer's been very much a team effort. Like the team we have working day in, day out, dealing with so much of people's heartache and pain on a day-to-day basis is hard, and it's emotionally challenging for the individuals as well. But there's been so many people over the years at different stages who've come in and helped at certain parts of it to get us to where we are, and that's continues today here in London. Kind of rallying the troops, as I say, and saying, look, how can we come together to make a difference? But I'm very lucky that we've got some good human beings, both kind of the staff and volunteering at the sides and boards and stuff like that. So yeah.
Great. Excellent. Well, I think that's our in conversation with drawing to a close. I think this is the bit where we hand back to Liz. Thank you so much for your time. That's been insightful as ever. And there's Liz just now.
Thank you very much. I just really want to say thank you to Sabina and for David to being so honest and sharing your own experience, but also the passion that you have clearly for making a difference and using that experience to make other people's lives so much better. Really, really inspiring story. And I guess for me, it's a great illustration that entrepreneurship takes many forms, and it's about harvesting the drive, that determination and a clear goal to take either a business or an enterprise forward, and how business can be such a force for good if it's got the right purpose. And I completely agree with David. I think passion and that connection with something that matters to you are absolute essential ingredients for finding that purpose. And I think just at the moment, we're hearing from businesses that there are just so many demands on business at the moment. We've got rising costs, labour shortage, recovery, fair work, net zero. But undoubtedly, more and more businesses are focusing on purpose as much as profit, and that our contribution to society and our environment are fundamental parts of our business model. Not something that should be or is viewed as a cost or an inconvenience, but it is an opportunity to shape the future of our economy and our city and our society, but also an opportunity for us to grow our businesses as well. I think reflecting on the Chamber, we've got two clear reasons to exist, and that's to support businesses, but also to make sure the environment in which those businesses exist is the best it can be. So influencing policy and influencing our politicians is an absolute critical role for us. But we all have a civic responsibility to ensure that we are giving back as much as we wish to take, that we empower staff, that we value the environment, and to carry on business with purpose and integrity. So, I found that an absolutely inspiring story. Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much to Sabina. Clearly know each other well, and you're both doing an absolutely amazing job. If I can thank everybody for attending the Business Festival, hope that you have been inspired, not just by today's session, but the whole 2 days. And really think about your business and how you can make it the best it can be, with those three elements at the heart of what you do, and that's purpose, planet, and even prosperity. There's nothing wrong with that. So before I close off, I would like to say a few thank yous. Firstly, thank you to the team at the Chamber pulling together these 2 days. I know hard on the back of our awards dinner a few weeks ago, the team have worked extremely hard pulling the programme together. So thanks very much, Emma and Rachel and the rest of the team. Thank you also to our speakers and our panellists. You've been so generous with your time. Can't believe there's been over 200 people attending 9 events over the 2 days. This is only our second, and it's a fantastic platform to build on. So a bit like our awards dinner, which we launched 11 years ago with about 80 people in the room, and we had almost 600 at the ICC this year. So I think, we're going to use this as a great platform to pull businesses together and to really set the right agenda for the city. Thank you to our sponsor, Denton's. Sponsorship is always very welcome and make these things happen. But also thank you to our attendees, over 200 across the 2 days, absolutely fantastic. Hope you all, the weekend is almost with us, so hope you have a good Friday tomorrow. Thanks again to Sabina and for David. David, you're an absolute star. Wish you all the very best and safe travels back up from London.